It's hard for people with disabilities. It's a big problem for them to find work. It's one of the reasons why they have a difficulty finding work. There were kind of qualitative studies where they would talk about the various barriers and obstacles people encounter, but from a psychological standpoint and how that affects people at a larger scale, there was really not that much out there. My name is Jessica Maury. I'm a researcher. I've been studying accessibility issues in transportation for the past 8 years. Interested in how people with different disabilities encounter obstacles in public transit, especially here in New York City. When I first started doing this research, I was mostly interviewing people with physical disabilities and trying to understand the problems that they encountered on a daily basis. But that research expanded to trying to understand the issues that people with all different kinds of disabilities encounter. People who are blind or have low vision, to some extent people who are deaf and hard of hearing, and then people that have cognitive disabilities, including developmental disabilities like autism. So these are hypothetical models for a survey that I'm conducting soon. The purpose is to try to understand more from the perspective of people with disabilities, what their transportation experiences are like. My research tries to center disability because people with disabilities have been underrepresented in mainstream research. Either 1 in 5 or 1 in 4 people have a disability that impacts their daily life. The ADA has been amended and people have tried to better define disability, the definition has actually expanded. In my research, I've found that many of the issues that affect people with disabilities also impact people who don't identify as disabled.
My name is Dustin Jones. I'm a disability rights activist, and I am an amputee. It was a surgical accident, and due to that, I lost part of my left foot. I have a lot of knee issues. I've actually had 2 hip replacements on each hip twice. So I pretty much use all the modes of transportations. I use taxis, I use commuter rails from time to time, I use subway and buses. Prior to my accident, I was actually in school. I wanted to become a NYPD police officer. When this happened to me, it was a huge eye-opener. It was a scary thought. It was really a scary thought process, because to have this happen and then to be like, okay, New York City is not as friendly as you thought it was, it just became a very scary place. The very first time I took the subway, and that took me, I want to say, almost 2 full years to actually get back on the subway, and it wasn't by choice. And I remember the fear of going down there, because I had heard so many stories, and I didn't know what to expect. And some of them were true. It was really, really disgraceful to see that New York City had thought so little of accessibility. I think the biggest obstacle that I find is the elevator access. It is less than average, very, very poor. And the elevators that we do have, they're just not in good working condition. I found myself, because I'm claustrophobic naturally, and I don't like elevators. I found myself waiting for people to ride the elevator with me because of my claustrophobia and because of the poor maintenance on a lot of these elevators. I really didn't feel comfortable riding the elevators by myself. But it took a while for me to actually get over that, to the point where I was able to ride the elevators by myself, but I still always have a genuine uneasiness about riding subway elevators. There was a point in time recently where every time I used the subway, there was always a broken elevator, and I would have to call the fire department and the NYPD to carry me out that particular subway station. The police came first, and they was like, "Aren't you that guy from the other day that we had to carry up?" In certain stations, the platforms are very narrow, and they have like these beams that pushes you out towards the tracks, and you're literally on that yellow strip, the tactile strip, and you're between that beam and the tracks. One of the worst platforms, I think, is on the 2 and the 3 in Fulton Street. Welcome to the 2 and the 3 platform. And it is so narrow that I don't feel comfortable going down to the conductor's car at all. It's really tight because of the pillar and how small the platform is, and there's a lot of obstacles in the way. And then what doesn't help is that you have a lot of people who are either not paying attention or just unaware of. Now, could you imagine trying to do that with a motorized chair? I have particular stations throughout the system that I will avoid because of either bad platforms or really horrendous elevators. I will not go to Fulton Street on the 2 and the 3. I will not go to Simpson Street on the 2 and the 5 in the Bronx. I will not go to Grand Central at all, and these are no exceptions. I will not go to Grand Central. I will not go to DeKalb, Franklin. I will not go to Franklin. I will not go to Jamaica Center in Queens. Those are just to name a few. Like I said, these are no exceptions. I will not go to these stations at all.
Now let me briefly describe the procedure for tonight's hearing. I will call the names of people who have registered to speak in the order in which they are registered.
Accessibility now! Accessibility is a civil right!
You'll see a can.
It's a civil right! You're violating our
Folks, we have a
rights!
number of public speakers. Jessica Maury.
Good evening. As you can tell by the comments, I think the timing of this fare hike proposal is really bad. It's not really fair to raise the fares for people who don't really have the option to use the subway, and they've been waiting a long time for elevators and equal access to the subway. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's time for some changes, and we need some accountability and transparency from the MTA. We need them to clean up their house and fix their budget and not put the fare increases on the backs of poor people and people with disabilities when they don't have their shit together. Pardon my language.
I do think absolutely people have a right to transportation. It's a basic human right, the ability to get from A to B, and there shouldn't be a two-tier structure whereby some people have full access and other people either have no access or are partially precluded from it. I can't say until I came to New York I'd ever been given a nickname, and so to be called Chain Daddy is quite, it's bemusing in some ways, but it's quite flattering. I'm Andy Byford, President of New York City Transit from January 2018 when I first arrived in New York. So just over 2 years. My job is a total top-to-bottom modernization of New York City Transit, including making it accessible.
One of the first actions that the Elevator Action Group took on was to present a map of the subway system to Andy Byford. We were initially a little bit wary of his full-throated support of accessibility in the subway, and we thought we would challenge that, and so we put little red pens into all the stations that were inaccessible to people with wheelchairs. And we gave it to him as a gift, and we said, you know, we would like to see this map change while you're here. And we included a letter inviting him to go on a ride with us on the subway. And he accepted. Jennifer, April, and I were the three people that ended up accompanying Andy on the ride-along.
I've really enjoyed working with Jessica, with Jennifer, with April, ever since we went on the ride nearly 2 years ago now. And I do remember that at the time there were people saying to me, "Oh, you shouldn't go on that ride. This is a protest organisation. Rise and resist." And I felt that I at least owed it to Jessica, who initiated that ride, to at least make my own mind up and go and see what Jess and April and Jennifer had to say. And I was very impressed by all three of the people that I rode around with that day, because there was a real passion. Since then, the relationship has really come along leaps and bounds.
The MTA is the Metropolitan Transportation Authority, and it's made up of three other agencies, Long Island Railroad, Metro North, and the New York City Transit System. New York City Transit covers all of the public transportation within New York City. And so this is the subways, the buses, and Access-a-Ride, which is paratransit service. But the MTA is a state-controlled agency, and the governor essentially he approves every board member that's part of the MTA, and they're the decision-making body. Since it's a state agency, the city has very little control over our own public transit system.
We need municipal control of our subways and buses. Every other city around the country, Boston, Los Angeles, Chicago, they have municipal control of their mass transit. We don't have that in New York City.
New York's an unusual setup in that the city doesn't control the transit system directly. The transit system is actually a state property. It's run effectively by the state of New York. It's a state-owned entity. The city and the state have to work together to address the very pressing needs of people with disabilities in the city.
The agreement that was made when the ADA was kind of the Americans with Disabilities Act was being decided, making this our subway system accessible. It's just not going to be possible. It's too expensive. And we're not going to do it unless we can negotiate some kind of agreement. That was supposed to be something that they can do in the short term, in the 25 years, to have some modicum of accessibility, and then build on that in the subsequent years after 2020 to make the whole system accessible. But the MTA has clearly been, not really planning for making other accessibility improvements. And when they started renovating these stations for the Enhanced Station Initiative, they basically ignored all of the Federal Transportation Authority's rules.
There were the 100 ADA key stations that were mandated as part of the ADA compliance for the MTA. And what we wanted to do was speed that whole process up. Just chugging along at the pace of being compliant with the ADA is not good enough.
Maintenance of this massive subway system has been kind of put off for years, and we've spent money on other projects because, the governor of New York wants to have ribbon cutting ceremonies.
So we're here to give his replica the chance to see what it would be like to cut the ribbon on this critical infrastructure that so many New Yorkers rely on.
What do we want? Elevators! When do we want them?
Now! Fight, fight, fight! Accessibility is a right! Fight, fight, fight! Accessibility is a right!
What do we want?
Elevators!
When do we want them?
Now! Accessibility is a right! Fight, fight, fight!
In '94, as part of negotiations for the Americans with Disabilities Act, the MTA agreed to make 100 stations wheelchair accessible by 2020. Under Governor Cuomo, the MTA has ignored ADA requirements. Now that congestion pricing is passed, we must hold Governor Cuomo accountable and make sure that he fully fund the next capital plan.
What do we want?
Elevators!
When do we want them?
Now!
The name of the group is the Elevator Action Group at Rise and Resist. And we're a coalition of concerned New Yorkers who have accessibility needs for a variety of reasons and just see accessibility as a civil rights issue and a human rights issue. And we think that people with disabilities should be able to ride the subway. This is a graphic I designed that we use. It's kind of our campaign slogan and logo. Whether you break a leg, whether you're traveling from the airport, if you're pregnant, if you have a child in a stroller, older people who have bad knees or bad backs, delivery workers. There's a whole range of people who need elevators.
Malaysia Goodson was found unconscious and unresponsive.
Fell down the steps while carrying her 1-year-old daughter and a stroller.
A young mother killed.
She fell and died at the bottom of a subway stairwell. This happened around 8 o'clock at night.
Found dead on the platform at the 7th Avenue BD station in Midtown last night.
And it was emergency 2 days ago when Malaysia Goodson passed away at the bottom of a staircase.
The loss the other day, which was in a subway station in my district, is one that could have been avoided.
We were devastated. We saw the tragic result of what happens when accessibility is not prioritized.
If there's any lesson of the last week, it's that riders need an accessible subway. All riders need an accessible subway.
mean? Because MTA elevators are not working. Disgusting. It's deplorable. Because you know why? I come all the way from Harlem. I come down here to celebrate my son's birthday. And then the elevators are not working. Shame on you. And I don't want to be like that girl last week and fall down the stairs because I'm just Nana. Like, how crazy is that? But you know what? Shame on you all.
In the subway, there's a gap to get on it, and like it might take me, I have to back up and go forward and back up and go forward.
People who are standing in the train are not going to find it amusing when I gun the chair to jump the gap and run them down.
I've been getting on and off at this stop for years, and this one time, I don't know what happened, but the gap between the train and the actual platform was about that big. I'm exaggerating. It was about that big. But I was like, you know what, I can wing it, I'm okay. I always go to the far right of the train car door, and I hold my hand on the wall, the side of the train. And I kind of push, so that way my small front wheels don't go down, and that generally works. So I made the same attempt that day when my front wheels went into the gap. My name is Jessica De La Rosa. I have a disability called osteogenesis imperfecta, which means my bones break very easily. And luckily for the hangers of my footrest, this part stopped me. It rested on the inside floor of the car. And I'm literally holding on like this going, help me! Help me! Like literally. And this guy got up and he helped me get up, you know?
The gap. The gap covers a lot of sins. The gap is two issues. There's the vertical gap. Then you have the distance from the train to the platform horizontally. So there's a gap between the train and the platform that you have to get over to get onto the train or off the train. So the gap at the shuttle is an extreme horizontal gap. If you go to 14th Street on the Lexington, where the bridge comes out, there are sliding wooden slats that spans the gap. But there's a considerable vertical gap at that stop as well. So the vertical gap requires you to be able to climb over the height of it. Now, if the car is packed, you'll have less of a gap because the weight of the car is squishing it a little. So if it's midday, an empty car, you can have a 4-inch gap. So the issue is, can you jump that? And there are people who have manual chairs who have little tiny front wheels. They're the ones who get their wheels caught. The problem is knowing that you can safely board a train at the platform and have confidence you'll be able to get off where you wish to depart. It's just so problematic. I mean, I've gotten stuck in cars that I can't get out of. That and the fear of elevators being out. If you talk to people who use wheelchairs, those two are the major issues.
My name is Edith Prentiss. I have been involved in issues related to public transportation for years. Even before I was disabled, I've always been involved in the access for people with disabilities to public transportation.
The placement of some of the poles are very problematic. I am to this day terrified at 72nd and Broadway. It's coming off something on the Express. And the platform was very crowded. And we ended up being at a stairwell. I couldn't get off. Then when I finally did make the turn, my front wheel went into the gap. I was terrified. If the train moves, I'm going to fall, And the elevator on the uptown platform is all the way at the end, and you've got to wheel the entire length of it between the poles, the I-beams, and the edge of the platform. And this is a small chair. I can't envision people who have big chairs doing that. Personally, I'm more frightened of a situation in which we may be taken off the train in an emergency. The evacuation issue is terrifying. You cannot allow yourself to be afraid, so afraid of using transit. You will become so totally isolated, and it's not an easy task, but it's better than the alternative, which is spending the rest of your life in your apartment. If you focus on what can happen to you underground, you'll never go there. And then you'll spend your life riding the New York City buses. You're going to sit in traffic.
I have a fear of the subway because most times I encounter problems with elevators not working, or there's not enough space for me to safely get off of the train. Sometimes I'll hit a pillar if I'm trying to get off correctly, and I just don't feel safe. I feel much safer above ground.
If I go somewhere in the train and the elevator's not working, and this has only maybe happened to me maybe 3 or 4 times in my years of traveling, but I get to call the firemen. So there's no reason to panic. They come and they pick you up. Just call 911, let them know that you're stuck in the train station, you're by yourself, and they'll send somebody over.
The question would be then, are you a bleeding heart? Why are you the one?
I'm not a bleeding heart. Oh, I am a bleeding heart, but that's not what's motivating me to be interested in this topic. I actually have multiple sclerosis. I was diagnosed when I was 25 years old. I saw the problems for other people first, and then the realization that it's also about myself kind of came later. The type of multiple sclerosis I have is relapsing remitting. It will stick around for a few weeks to a few months, and then I go back to normal. Damage during exacerbations is permanent. There can be some healing, but when you go into remission, this nerve damage compounds over time, and people slowly progress into disability.
And I wish people wouldn't pee in our elevators and treat the elevators with respect.
Urine in the elevator. More urine. I used tampon. More urine. Vomit. This one really scared me. Garbage. Sometimes there's so much urine when you roll in, there's no way to get around the urine. So now you've rolled through it. That's the result. My arm is absolutely disgusting. Lotto tickets. This urine, particularly gross. So much urine in there, no way to avoid it. Again, more urine. When you see urine outside the elevator, you know when that door opens up where you're going to encounter. Oh, and there it was. That, something's going on in that urine. I don't even know what happened in there. There's so much dirt and urine and grime. I don't know what that is. More urine. I didn't put a photo there of an elevator that I rolled into that was smeared in feces. I have to wear gloves. I probably have a pair a week.
My name is Julie Maury. I have cerebral palsy. I use the power chair because I can't hold on to a wheel very well and push. The mode of transportation that I prefer to use most often are the city buses. In the subway here, I don't feel okay or safe. And so I live on city buses to get around from point A to point B. Constantly telling people, please watch your feet, please tuck your feet in, please watch your feet, because if I hit people's feet, they will yell at me. They will say things like, you people have accessorized, you're not supposed to be on the bus. There was in the beginning, they fought to get the keys for the lifts, because many times they would go and the bus driver didn't want to put them on, so they would conveniently forget the lift key. And so many people started carrying the lift keys. I carry a lift key.
The drivers on buses who don't want to pick me up, I've had drivers call me a burden. Drivers lie and say the lift is broken or they don't have the key, which is wonderful because I have mine. And I'm like, really? I have mine. So it's very discouraging. It makes me feel inadequate as a human being. Or they'll even say to me, hey, why don't you just take Accessoride? People don't realize how much that those facial expressions and mannerisms can make a person, feel. And I was like, I'm sorry, I'm a burden to you, dude. Like, let's just go, And he's like, yeah, you really are.
Some bus drivers will say, I'm not moving this bus until, the wheelchair is on board. There are some very good, empowered bus drivers. And they're the ones who just really don't care and drive by us.
Well, mostly for the rain and snow. I don't use the subway because it's slippery and I don't want to have an accident. So I try to use more buses. Me personally, sometimes I feel like when they see me, I'm not welcomed. So, some of them have this, oh, you sure you want this bus? And people will make comments, so why don't you take a taxi? Isn't there Accessoride? So I stopped using Accessoride predominantly in 2015. I got so tired of all of the delays and all of the nonsense that came along with it.
I only take Accessoride in bad weather if I really have to. Other than that, I would do my best to avoid it.
New York City Transit decided back in the 90s that it was too expensive to put elevators in all the subways or in all the subway stations. And so the best solution was just to drive people. So they are servicing about 150,000 people, which is really not even that many people when you think that the subway is moving around, 5.5 million people a day. 150,000 is not that many, but it's costing $500 million a year.
And invariably, specialist systems such as Accessoride come at a premium. So, if you do want to distill it down to just basic dollars and cents and costs and look at it from a very unempathetic, pure financial perspective, even that doesn't pass muster. Even that says that what we should be doing is biting the bullet, not seeing it as a cost, seeing it as an investment and something that absolutely is the moral right thing to do.
Also kind of essentially segregates people with disabilities, a separate but equal kind of mode of transportation for people with disabilities, and also essentially putting them out of sight, out of mind.
I think I was 9 years old when I started using Accessoride. I've often had trouble. They tell you to be outside 15 minutes beforehand, then wait 5 minutes after. But oftentimes if you're not there, even if they're early, they'll leave. I've had some people say that they were there and they were not there.
I've had a couple of incidents where I've been assigned a vehicle. It's going to be 35, 40 minutes. Okay, fine. I'm sitting outside reading. I don't care. And then suddenly my phone says, thank you, rate your ride. And I get a receipt. And I never left my sidewalk.
I think the MTA is finally realizing that they made the wrong choice with putting in so much effort into paratransit as opposed to to investing in elevators. And those decisions over the last 30 years have really caught up with them now. I've had 4 major exacerbations. The second one was kind of bilateral. Both my legs became numb. It's been a while, but that last one was like pretty intense. I was having motor issues. I wasn't able to really use my left hand at all. I had a lot of pain in my whole arm. And my foot was dragging on the left side. So my foot not doing what my brain was telling it to do, which was, to walk. It definitely freaked me out. It's kind of, I feel like I'm a little bit, I do get some muscle spasticity in my feet, and I do have some fatigue, but for the most part, my functioning is pretty normal. But I have kind of gotten these glimpses of disability, and I think that was kind of the first time I realized that this was a degenerative disease that was gonna, eventually affect my mobility.
Better than it was.
You can actually at least see each step.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When they have the yellow strip at the top of the stairs, that's very helpful. But it's completely haphazard here. There's no uniformity at all. I need to know when it starts. I never know when I go into a station if they're going to have steps painted. See how this is black all the way across and then it's yellow at the edges? And that's helpful right now because it's not very crowded, but during rush hour sometimes I'm forced to walk down the middle because there's so many people. I can't get over to the side, so I can't always tell coming from that direction. You can't see the yellow on the front there. So it can be kind of dangerous because suddenly there's a step that's not marked very well from that direction. My name is Catherine Taylor, and I am legally blind. My vision is completely awful, and I can see really clearly only a few inches in front of my face. It's a little bit frustrating that in order to live where transportation is good, it often means that I also have to live where it's more expensive. That's a hidden cost for someone like me. This is the kind of thing that's helpful to everyone, I feel, but has the side effect of being beneficial to someone like me. I won't even look at this because a lot of times these are not even accurate anymore, and it's harder for me to read than what I can hold on my phone and close. Because the other thing is, looking things up on my phone, people don't know if I'm looking at a map or if I'm looking at email. People might and not realize that you're lost. If I want to take the 6 downtown, it's all the way at the opposite end of this station. It's not very clearly marked. It can be kind of dangerous because if you can see, it forces you to walk really close to the tracks. If I wanted the 6 and I didn't notice this badly lit sign and accidentally went down there, there's no way out again. Like, I'd have to backtrack and come all the way back up and try again at a different stairwell. And there were a couple of times in the Times Square station or the Union Square station where I just got completely turned around kind of late at night, and I would see somebody in one of the MTA vests and I'd say, I don't know where I'm going and I can't see well, can you help me? And both times I did that, they walked me to where I needed to go. They didn't just say, oh, you go down that hallway. 99% of the time people have been helpful when I've had to ask something like that. But I have found if I go on Google Maps and I can look on there and follow the route that I'm taking, like, that's more helpful than asking other people most of the time. I use things like the exit strategy app, which is really immensely helpful because it will show the layout of the station on a map. And so if it's a really strange station like Times Square where there's no rhyme or reason to it, it's really helpful to have beforehand a mental map in my head. If I take my time, I can get around, I can find my way. But it's doing so in the context of also trying not to make other people angry. People walking behind me get impatient sometimes because they don't know why I'm going slower. And I do try to move over to the side and get out of the way, but some people get really upset. I have to get right underneath signs, basically, to read them. People startle me by saying things out of the blue, and I'm minding my own business, and someone will say something really kind of mean-spirited. I don't understand why you're so angry that you couldn't keep going in a straight line. That's always shocking to me. I actually don't read Braille, which always surprises people. On many poles in the subway stations, you know, where they have the numbers saying what station it is, underneath that it'll have the street name in Braille. If someone has such bad vision that they need to use Braille, how are they going to find that pole and know where to feel to read the street name?
Yep, not on this one. Oh, Queens. Okay, but it doesn't tell me the train? Nope. Nope. Nothing. Okay. I bet you it's the same thing. Yeah, exactly.
This is a Queens-bound Athens local train. The next stop is 34th Street, Herald Square.
So the thing about finding something is that you have to know that it's there in the first place. Right. That's sort of where I get stuck, right? Yeah, you can put up all the sign you want, all the Braille that you want, but if we don't know that it's there, then what good is it? My name is Nefertiti Matos, and I identify as somebody who is blind. I hesitate to go around just touching on pillars, you know, because you never know what you're going to find. You might touch a person or something really gross. I don't know. I don't want to have to be reaching for things and exploring and realizing, okay, this one doesn't have Braille. Let me go to the next one. That one doesn't have Braille. Okay, let me go to the next one. So if there is Braille signage, let us know that that information is actually there. I learned a long time ago how unreliable that is. The information that I would personally find useful is what level of station platform am I on? What train can I expect to board on that given platform? Or what direction that train is headed in? If there's a restroom in a station, or, you know, this way to the concession stand, the direction of maybe where the stairs are so that I can get out of there. Something of that sort where I have just as much access to information and what's available as a sighted person. So the obstacles that I most encounter when I'm using public transportation are lack of audio cues. There may be an elevator 10 feet away from me, but unless I hear a little like ding, letting me know that there's something going on, or the door's opening, or something to indicate, hey, elevator, that's what you're looking for. Go, you know, orient to the right. I'll get on a train, maybe the PA system isn't loud enough, or is super staticky, scratchy, or the person, for whatever reason, is unintelligible to me. I like to sit in the seat closest to the door or literally stand right by the door. But I like to know that I am by a place where I can quickly get out if necessary. I am so sort of hesitant or wary of asking just random people for confirmation of something or clarification on something because, again, I never know what I'm going to get. And sometimes these are split-second decisions, right? This station is coming up and I think it might be the one that I want, but I'm not sure. Just not knowing where I am, that's a really disorienting, really unpleasant feeling.
This is a Manhattan-bound 7th local train. The next stop is 46th Street.
I do have most of the stations that I use memorized, mostly where I should be on the train to get to the turnstiles as quickly as possible, and even more importantly, which staircase I should take to get out. I'm always making mental maps in my mind and sort of reversing my direction. If I'm coming from uptown, then it'll look like this. If I'm coming from downtown, it'll look like this.
These are some brand new
This is a
visual
new station.
displays.
So what's here? Like I can touch this and make things happen?
I don't think this one's interactive.
So it's just flashing? What is this one? Huh. Alrighty. There you go then. The thing is that all this stuff exists, right? On iDevices, on Androids, on ATMs, it's all over the place. There's no excuse for why this type of technology can't be implemented. In addition to the crowds and the myriad directions that you can take or get lost in, the noise, there is that component of you don't know what might be going on. I don't know if it should be up or down. Everybody's, busy going to wherever they're going. I may ask somebody, I just wish there was a way to do it independently. I mean, I got this far. To have it be that what messes me up is a lack of information, it's insulting. Sounds like an exit. Here I'm confused. I don't know if that's a train downstairs or a train up here going down that way because I'm hearing a lot of people. I'm hearing calypso music.
Did those work?
It would be if I knew where they were.
There's one right behind you.
Really? In here? This says information. Okay. What am I gonna do? Oh! Yikes. Okay.
Good afternoon. Helpline for Florida speaking. How may I help you?
I'm looking for the NQW. Are you?
You're at that station, but you see the signs in yellow that say NQ.
So that's the trouble. I cannot see it.
So if you look down the platform towards the stairwell, there should be signs that say NQRW.
Doesn't get it. Okay. Again, the trouble is that I cannot see. I am blind, so I'm not sure what you mean. Are you in this station or are you somewhere remote?
No, ma'am. We're miles away from you. Station agent, you connected?
Yeah.
I am connected.
Hi.
Do you have any clue to where she may be?
I have no idea where she's at.
I'm gonna go back to where I came from and ask someone because I think the NQR should be on that level.
I'm sorry, you're connected here.
No worries, we're gonna fix this. I just finished speaking to a couple of agents, both of them, one of which was a station agent and some guy miles and miles away, trying to find out where the NQW trains are, and as it turns out, I'm right by them.
Stand clear of the closing doors, please.
wait for someone to pass by that I want to ask, or I trek down, find somebody on the platform, ask them. If I'm right, great. If I'm wrong, come back up and start all over again. So even though I thought this was towards my destination, it actually turns out not to be. Luckily, somebody nearby told me that. I have to start over again, so let's go, I guess. This is not the right way. Everything is swirling around me, and it's like I'm trying to focus on like where the open spaces are. So like the staircase, it mostly works when the staircase is going down, because it sounds like a bit of a hollow to me. And trying to like stay pinpointed on that while people are talking and music is going and trains are going by, and then getting to something and then realizing this is not the one I want and doing it over again. It's a lot. Is that a downtown or an uptown?
This is downtown.
Downtown. F and M?
BDF and M.
BDF and M. Thank you. Okay. Now I'm not so sure. Let's find out. Since these are trains that I can trust to make announcements, I would wait and I would hear. Don't hear a thing though, but okay, thank you. Did you hear anything? Because I didn't. No. No? Well, so it doesn't always work. Thanks. Okay.
First time I had had any kind of motor symptoms, it made me feel like I was not in control of my own body. I had kind of come to this conclusion that, oh no, I'm never going to have those kind of symptoms. There is no normal progression for MS. Everyone is totally different. It was just disturbing and upsetting. You know, I always try not to think too much about the possibilities of like the worst case scenarios. You know, as I get older, I have no idea how my disease is going to progress.
I basically use my phone to like find the map thing, which is basically the first part of the image on your screen, and just type in the address of like where you want to go, and it gives you the options of like which transportations you need to take. I'm mostly comfortable with like just using the phone on my map and not needing like something for people with disabilities. My name is Charles Cohen. I'm essentially autistic, maybe a bit of PDD. I was like part of this travel train thing at my school where they teach people to use the subways and the buses to get to your destination, mostly just to focus on your destination in and out. They've taught you some interesting like rules about that, like you cannot like really interact with anyone, even if it was for like asking for help. People could jump on you anytime and take advantage of you, and take your money and all that stuff. Not everybody is like that. I mean, I'm not saying there's no bad people in the world, but again, it's mostly taking caution. Now that I basically know about transportation, I could basically talk to who I want. It's just sometimes I like to keep like a little quietness, but again, it's very, very, very difficult. You just gotta be smart and like be aware of your whole surroundings. You like slowly but surely get more independent and feel a little more confident. It's all the matter of like how you learn to progress the ability. Mostly routine then slowly but surely go off and party on your own. Maybe like I had like one or two concerns about like traveling by myself because of like little moments here and there. Maybe the train has like stopped for like quite a while and you're kind of like in a panicky mode, like what you're gonna do and like knowing how long the train takes to get going. Maybe just like little moments like, okay, why is this stop for so long? But I don't think I've ever had like a moment where I was like too panicking. But for some people it does like affect them immensely. People who are very low functioning autistic who could easily just get like very frustration on the whole situation. Talk to the conductor and maybe he'll give like a word of advice of what you need to do. I think like the first experience of getting lost can be a little frightening, but once you're used to your surroundings, you know the solutions of what to do. For me, I'm an adventurer, like, in a way. And because I'm more independent, like, if I get to, like, a point where I have no idea where I'm going, it's like, okay, maybe I'll take, like, a little adventure. It's not the end of the world or so. It's always, like, keeping your eye on your surroundings and, like, not to mention, like, hearing the speakers, of course. You know, you always have trains that, like, figure it out for yourself, kind of. Be a window looker for that. You know, like, when you get to your destination, they obviously have the name of the place you have to get off to. I'm constantly on my phone, X, Y, and Z, but I know, like, when to look and all that stuff.
I am Michael Letman. I have high-functioning autism. I mostly use the subway, since I liked trains back when I was little. I've enjoyed trains for a long time. And I sometimes use the bus, but I mostly prefer trains. For my own safety, I need to stay away from the type of people that I need to be away from. Anyone who curses. Anyone that looks like they're a bad person. That's when I feel a little danger. It's hard to be safe when you're on the trains. You never know what will happen. I need to be careful, be aware of my surroundings, and be aware of the people that are around you when you're on the trains. People get impatient and see. And they say a lot of cursing stuff, and they say a lot of angry feelings, and I have to sit right there listening to them hurt my own ears. My ears feel like they're suffering, even in here hurts. So I have to learn to survive it. Or if it's safe enough, walk away from it. I've researched and memorized the directions of where I need to go. And while I'm in those areas, thanks to that research, I've managed to figure things out with my memorization and arrive at my destinations. As long as I know my way with the addresses and the directions, I can memorize them and know my way around the areas so I can arrive at my destinations and enjoy myself. I think I almost got lost a few times, but my memorization came back to me, and I managed to find my way back. Or if it doesn't help, I ask people for help. Maybe I still have a long way to go to become an independent traveler, but with my memorization of the New York City Transit, I think I'm close to my goal. That would make me feel very happy.
I have very good peripheral vision. So if something's going on in the corners, I'm aware of it. When everybody starts getting up on walking off the train, you know there's something happening, right? I'm Ruth Bernstein. I'm on the board of the Hearing Loss Association of America, New York City chapter. I've been an advocate for people with hearing loss for about 40 years. I have a profound hearing loss, and I am, according to the local, so my audiogram, I'm deaf. With 2 hearing aids, I function reasonably well on a one-to-one basis. I have a lot of trouble with noise. I have this assistive listening system, and you're wearing the mic, and I'm wearing the receiver. I use the Notes app to get answers to questions I may not be able to hear. There's a microphone down here, and if you talk to it, it will transcribe what you're saying. So I had a conversation this way on the subway. Verbal announcements are not understandable yet. I'm making everything that's verbal visual. That basically is, you know, if the train is going to be delayed, put it up on the sign. They haven't figured out the technology. They're getting there. It takes a very long time with the MTA. We've been talking to them for 30 plus years. I'm comfortable asking for information. You need to be able to say, I need help, please. I have no trouble identifying myself as being someone with a hearing loss. Hearing loss is basically an invisible disability. Mm-hmm. Unless you say, look, I have hearing aids, most people don't recognize it, and there are no visual signs. Therefore, you really need to speak up. New York City information booths are looped, so you can use your T-switches, and I use my iPhone. I am a big user of visual help. In other words, I use maps, I use the MTA app, I have a subway app, and I use Google. The MTA app now tells you what's running, what's not running, when the trains are coming, etc. It really has, in the last couple of months, really changed a lot. I usually know where I'm going, and I have this wonderful app map on my phone, which gives me all the possible information I could use, which is really changed my life. And I now have an iWatch, so that also gives me the feeling of security. Like I said, this is my rescue. And I write a blog for the Center for Hearing and Communication. One of my favorites is Why I Love My iPhone.
We need access! We need access! We need access! The disability community is under attack. The senior population is under attack. Mothers, people with strollers are under attack. It is horrendous what the conditions that the subways are on. The elevators that we do have, they don't work properly.
Accessibility is a right! Fight, fight, fight! Accessibility is a right! Fight, fight, fight! Accessibility is a right! Fight, fight, fight!
My name is Alex Elagoud, and I'm the Senior Advisor for System-Wide Accessibility for New York City Transit. I report directly to the President on a variety of disability and accessibility issues. So obviously, we have at New York City Transit, along a ways to go in terms of creating the infrastructure that we need for our system to be accessible.
I'm very proud of the team at Transit. It's a very capable team. It's got rich, genuine diversity. Alex himself is, of course, a wheelchair user. He's been an advocate for many years. He's now working for Transit, passionately taking forward at the executive level the cause of accessibility.
We're working with the Transit Bureau Training Department, some of whom is here, to create additional materials for you on best practices. You know, how to deal with this situation, how to deal with that situation, specifically as it relates to accessibility. If you have this information at your disposal, you can change someone's day. You can be that much more helpful as a resource to a person with a disability. Helping somebody understand how to reroute around an elevator outage, you've just helped somebody save 2 hours, or help somebody from having to call the FDNY to carry them out of a station. You know, helping out each other. And I think the Neighborhood Policing Initiative, and certainly your role as NCOs, is all about that.
I'm Inspector Christine Bustiabeck from the Transit Bureau. Now, the Transit Bureau is part of the Neighborhood Policing Initiative in the police department. It's working together to help solve the problems that arise within the subway system. In the academy, we do training on individuals with disabilities, but this is one of the things that the NYPD and the Transit Bureau, we thought that this was an important thing to do.
This is Chief Delatorre, he's the head of the Transit Bureau. He's been a great partner for us and has really taken disability and accessibility very seriously.
Sometimes we don't always understand all the aspects of the needs of the other person. And that's what I'm hoping that we can really do here today, is when these officers leave here, they will fully understand any and all needs and how to better service the disabled community. That's a top priority for us.
My role at New York City Transit, I have been asked by the president to foster this cultural change, not just with the NYPD, but with our own transit employees.
Hi, my name's Jennifer Bartlett. I have cerebral palsy. I've had it all my life. It's part of my identity, and I wouldn't want to be able-bodied. My main issue with the subway is just keeping safe in terms of walking, and I use a cane. A lot of the issues I deal with are difficulty on stairs, is gaps. There are large gaps when the trains pull up. I was at Grand Central. This was about 2 years after 9/11. There was an unattended suitcase on the platform. I went to the police officer, they utterly ignored me. They're like, oh, no, sorry, we don't. Then I watched an able-bodied person walk up to them, and it was taken care of. I am very loath to go to a police officer because that police officer will probably assume that I'm drunk or incapacitated and ignore me and dismiss me. This has happened to me a number of times.
I'm saying that to all of you. Bring it back to your districts, please. And it's all about awareness, and I think you hit it on the head for us. I think it's about us being more and more aware of situational approaches that will help us be better at serving everybody. So thank you.
I have a speech impediment and an awkward gait. I use the subway, bus, three-wheel bike, ferry, cabs, and Accessoride. My preferred ride to work is to ride my bike to the ferry and ride my bike to work. I had the system sort of memorized. I know where the elevators are. I get tired, so I have all the shortest distances memorized. The biggest obstacles I encounter are stairs. I asked a passerby to carry my walker up and down the stairs, and I just slowly make my way up and down stairs. I've had a lot of negative experiences, people making fun of me, people staring at me, people laughing at me, people calling me retarded, people talking to each other about me or commenting on my parenting skills or all that kind of stuff. For me, being an activist was very important. I've done a lot of activism through writing. I worked as an advisor on the series in the New York Times. That series is actually how I met Jessica, and we founded the Elevator Action Group. I believe all the trainings need to be led by disabled people. Every single training that takes place across the board needs to be led by a disabled person standing in front of them, not a video, not an able-bodied person. And another thing is, we all need some jobs.
You hired high-level accessibility advisor Alex Elagudin, and then he hired Jennifer later.
The MTA had never had an accessibility chief, and Alex Elagudin was just perfect for the job. He himself, though, could not do everything. He needed a team to work with him. Jennifer obviously was one of the people that I did the walkabout with, and I came to hugely respect her. She is a brilliant writer. So it was with great pride that we recruited Jennifer.
You got a job working for the MTA?
Yeah, I work for the MTA. My title is training specialist. I write and do trainings for people working the MTA about disability. I also make movies, training videos. I work in Andy Byford's office, and really proud of that because I really like Andy. I really adore Andy. I think he's a very, very special person. I work in system-wide accessibility. I work for Alex Hooligan, and I really like my job. How do I deal with working for an organization that I criticized in the past? I really like my bosses, and I really believe in them. To me, I'm doing the same thing I was doing before, but now I'm getting a paycheck. That's how I feel. I don't feel like my voice is silenced. It's a tricky question. I don't believe my job is pandering. I don't believe it. The people I work with directly definitely have a voice, and I definitely have a voice.
Accessibility is a right. Fight, fight, fight. Accessibility is a right. Fight, fight, fight. fight.
And it takes 3 hours to get to a destination when it takes somebody else a half an hour. And then I get to the elevator after checking the status and it's broken. And everybody else goes up to the elevator and goes, oh, it's out of service. And they just go up the stairs. And now I'm stuck looking for somebody to help me get out. We want equal and safe access to our subway stations. And we call on the MTA to make a legal binding, committing to make the subways fully accessible. Yes. That is why we are in court today. Thank you. I've always been an advocate. It's exhausting sometimes, but I know the importance of being an advocate. Yes, absolutely advocate, let them know.
I do remember a few years ago, I was arrested in front of Gracie Mansion. I and a few other people blocked the traffic in front of Gracie Mansion. I think I was holding a sign that said, accessible taxis for all. There's video of it somewhere. And I was arrested. I think that was my last arrest.
Whatever it takes, that's what a Manhattan judge ruled yesterday when it comes to installing elevators in any subway station that undergoes major renovations.
Disability rights advocates filed a lawsuit in 2016 after the MTA made major improvements to the station, replacing all the staircases without installing elevators. In a statement, the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York said, quote, individuals with disabilities have the same rights to use the New York City subway system as every other person. The court's decision marks the end of the MTA treating people with disabilities as second-class citizens.
The court case was really important, but it really only applied to one station out of the entire system. When they replace the stairs, they have to make the entrance accessible. And a lot of times they just weren't doing that. And that's a direct violation of the ADA, which the judge agreed with. The biggest case is based on New York City human rights laws. The systematic practice of renovating stations without making them accessible and ignoring the requirements of the Americans with Disabilities Act is a case of repeated discrimination against people with disabilities. So that's the one that the MTA is really fighting in court, because if they win the lawsuit, that means they have to make 100% of the system accessible.
We filed this suit 2 years ago, and what's happened since then? Delay, delay, delay. How many new elevators have been built since then and added to the system, making new access for everyone, for all these people? 0. There's been a lot of talk about it from the governor, Andrew Cuomo, from the MTA, but no action.
Today we are here to ask the judge to do the right thing, to give us that leadership that we don't have, that we have been longing for. To set straight that we need accessible stations everywhere in the city. We have rights. We are people with disabilities. This is a civil right. The type of advocacy work I do is predominantly transportation, trying to ensure that people with disabilities have a clear-cut mode of transportation, a transportation that's fair and that's affordable and accessible.
I'm very proud of the Advisory Committee for Transit Accessibility, or ACTA. What really makes ACTA powerful for New York is that it's made up of a much wider spectrum of people and representing different communities. It's essential that you use the community to do that work, that you draw on the community's expertise and the accessibility advocates' expertise. We do need advocates to help us better understand how we can do better.
This was created by Andy Byford, and he really wanted to get input from the disability community on their needs. The committee is made up of 18 people, including myself, April Coughlin, Edith Prentiss, and 15 other advocates and people with different types of disabilities.
Are you still the interim chair?
Yeah, I'm the chair now.
You
I was voted the chair, yeah.
Okay, so even better.
I've been the chair of the committee since January 2020, and we're organizing 5 different subcommittees to address all of the different issues that touch accessibility. They have had a team for ADA compliance, and I think compliance is a little bit different than what we're trying to do, which is to move beyond the requirements and what's in the law, and to actually bring in people with the experiences that can point out the problems that are maybe not so clearly defined in the law, but negatively affect their experience.
Jessica now chairs the advisory committee, and I think that's, again, really good. It shouldn't be a staff member that chairs that committee. It should be someone with skin in the game. It should be an advocate, and I think Jessica's really risen to that challenge.
The medication I take now is called Tecfidera, and I've been using this treatment for the last 4 to 5 years, I think. My immune system is somewhat compromised, so it is easier for me to get sick. A real fear of mine was to lose my cognition. I think the motor and sensory issues that I've had in the past are probably what will happen in the future. I have had some balance issues, so I could see that also happening. I have to get MRIs of my brain and different parts of my spine when I go in, and I have lesions throughout.
Accessible Station Lab at J Street Metro Tech. Some of the features that they're trying out here are tactile guideways for people who have low vision or are blind, tactile line maps for some of the train lines so people can read in Braille what the stations are. They're trying out directional strips, which directs people to the different train lines. These kind of crisscross of different lines directs people where to go. Station diagrams that will also tell people where the elevators are in the station. There are expanded boarding area signage on the ground. There's a lot of good stuff happening here. I'm excited to see some progress and a willingness to try new things.
Okay, good afternoon everyone. Welcome to J Street Metro Tech Station to make this subway system, fully accessible. It's a huge task. This is a very old system, but we're deadly serious about pushing along that path to full accessibility. We want to showcase for you a suite of around 15 different station design elements, 15 different initiatives that maybe will be part of the stations of the future. Amongst us today are the advocacy groups who are our partners. We work with them, they hold our feet to the fire, and it's thanks to them also that we are where we are today. This is about
saying to the customers, the people with disabilities, what would you find most useful? I just want to do one more shout out, and that is I did mention Alex's team. They're all kind of hiding at the back, but it's people like Rachel there, who is Alex's deputy. It's people like Jennifer. Jennifer's on the team.
The first feature we're starting with is these tactile guideways you see on the floor.
Understanding our station. Our stations can be simple or complex. How to transfer subway lines.
With Navalens, you want to point the camera to one of the complex codes here. This is a tactile and braille map. This map is really focused on orienting the user to basic features of the station. This is also a tactile map. What's different about this map is that it's actually interactive. So it has braille and tactile features. It also shows the tactile guideway. But if you touch a feature on the map, it'll turn on. It'll say, "Welcome to Byford Metro Town." And I can feel my way around the map, touch a feature, and here, that's the escalator down to the R train platform.
Here, you see here on the R platform, we are going to be trialing a new gap filler solution.
Select whether you want to go by elevator or stairs.
I'm just going to follow this line right to the elevator. All right, as you see, we have our line right here, taking us right to the accessible boarding area. We have an accessible boarding area at every station.
I just want to say thanks again for coming. I want to do a big shout out again to my team, to the advocacy groups. I think we've made a huge amount of progress.
Breaking news this noon. New York City Transit President Andy Byford is stepping down.
End of the line for the city's transit president.
He abruptly called it quits today.
The city's transit boss is hitting the brakes on his MTA career.
Andy Byford is resigning.
Andy Byford has been credited with improving transit performance since he took on the job 2 years ago, but today he announced he will no longer be at the helm.
Calling it quits in New York City Transit.
It's a real tragic loss for New York City.
Andy Byford was the man that was hailed as the one who was going to fix our beleaguered subway system, but today he quit. He says he was sidelined and he wasn't allowed to do the job he was brought here to do.
He said in his resignation letter it's because they were reducing his role.
Andy Byford is leaving.
I'd like to say a big thank you to Governor Cuomo for giving me this opportunity.
Governor Cuomo, who controls the MTA, today rejected the idea that he and Byford clashed.
I don't think there's any truth to the fact that he couldn't get along with me.
Reports have long dogged the governor that he asserts undue influence over the MTA and New York City Transit, and in this case didn't allow Byford to do his job.
But he's a good man, and I wish him well.
Why did you really quit?
I think largely it was just sheer frustration. Towards the end of my tenure, I felt that the job had become somewhat intolerable. Progressively, I found myself excluded from meetings, being undermined, if I'm honest.
Were you being undermined by the governor?
To a large extent.
Was that the straw that broke the camel's back?
Pretty much. My people were being yelled at, they were being given direction, and I was deliberately excluded from those meetings. That's just not right. No one asked me to resign, but at the end of the day, I felt I was, to a certain extent, wasting my time. With my departure from the role of New York City Transit president, it's essential that we don't lose momentum. The advocates can help make sure that that doesn't happen. Together with people like Jessica, we have unleashed something that is not going to be suppressed. The accessibility genie is not going back in the bottle.
We were all pretty upset when we heard that Andy was leaving because he was such a leader on this issue. I think he really changed the conversation at New York City Transit and at the MTA about accessibility. It kind of just left us feeling uncertain about the future.